Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. My name is Dara Coakley. I'm from the Cork Institute of Technology, from the Department of Technology and Enhanced Learning. And I was responsible really for dealing with the multitude of digital champions which were active in CIT, and very pleasant dealings they were too. So what we thought we would do, if it's okay with everyone, is I have a number of slides on kind of all of the different projects which went on, but I'm very lucky to be joined here today by 4 exemplary digital champions, Dr. Roy Slater, Thomas Broderick, Zed Aslam, and Shane Cronin. And to begin, I'd like to invite each of them to come up and talk a little bit about their own project, and then with the remaining time, and Tom, you might give me a nod to tell me to, I'll go through maybe some of the findings from the other digital champions. Just quickly before I begin, there's a number of interviews available on the blog with each of the digital champions. There was an event in CIT where people presented on their projects that was streamed and it was recorded, so there will be a link to that on the blog very soon. And apart from that, maybe just a quick thank you to all of the digital champions I dealt with, to Tom and to Tara for doing such a great job running the project, to all the project partners and to the National Forum. So to begin, what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite Zed Aslam to come and give a quick talk on the use of mind mapping.
Brilliant, thanks. Okay, so I'm just going to assume that everybody here is doing at least some sort of classroom teaching, or a few contact hours anyway. And can I just start by asking, how many people like PowerPoint? Oh, okay. 1 person. Okay, 2. How many people use PowerPoint? Everybody. And I think that generally does sum up attitudes to PowerPoint. So the tool that I'm just going to quickly show you is mind mapping. I think mind mapping is definitely not a new concept. Everybody's kind of familiar with it as a shorthand way of getting ideas out there quickly. I suppose for me what was interesting about it was its use either within the classroom or for creating things like modules and courses and so on. So okay, so some of the issues around PowerPoint is that it's a very linear system. In that when you're using PowerPoint, you're really just sort of taking people through a very straightforward path. We start here, we end there, and as we all know, our subjects don't tend to be like that. We tend to start on one subject, and then we do a bit of a deep dive, and then we go back up, and then we move on to the next subject, but the next subject might have more to do with this subject than it did to the last subject, and so on. And PowerPoint is really, really lousy at expressing relationships between different areas. And the obvious alternative then would be to use something like the whiteboard. Which is great as well, apart from the fact that whiteboards are quite slow, and if you're anything like me, nobody can read your handwriting, and you get very limited space to use it. And one of the big issues as well with whiteboards is the digital capture. So there's no real way of capturing the information. If you've got very diligent students, which obviously at CIT they absolutely all are, then they'll be busy writing notes. But you know yourself that that isn't always the case. And you know as well, how many times have you been in presentations and meetings where you've taken a photo of the whiteboard or the screen, and then where does that information live? It lives on your phone and it never absolutely ever moves off of it. So digital capture is kind of one of the advantages of MindMap as well. So you can just take it once you've finished it, you can put the URL up onto Blackboard or wherever else, and the students can access it immediately. So I thought I'd also just talk about a couple of other things, maybe just have a quick talk about some use cases. Oops. And also just mention a couple of the tools that I use. So in terms of the use cases, largely they fall into the classroom and the non-classroom. based stuff. And in terms of the classroom, particularly where I find it very good is for intros to particular subjects. So it's there, you're at the beginning of a 12-week semester, and you want to overview the whole thing. So it's a great way of kind of building up and pulling out people's knowledge. It's also really good for brainstorming and getting conversations going, especially kind of if you're in groups of kind of 30 people plus, you know, sort of 30 people and, you know, a bit less maybe, where you can kind of get everybody's ideas out and get the group to participate, but still try to capture everything. And then the other area that I use it a lot for would be revision classes. So just to kind of help you revise over everything and so on. In terms of non-classroom stuff, I'm sure you can come up with your own ones. One of my favorites is using it for module development. And again, sort of when you're at the beginning of a kind of creating a module, it's really important to kind of not be getting too much into the detail, just trying to have this idea of these ideas are here and these ideas are there, and you can drag them and drop them, you can draw relationships between things. So it's very easy, for example, okay, I've forgotten how to do it. It's very easy, for example, just to draw dotted lines between different things to illustrate their relationships and so on. In terms of the tools, the one that I'm using right now is called MindMap. It's a free tool that you can just log in and start using as easily as you've seen it now. The other one that I've used before, thanks to Dara over there, is Bubblus, so bubbl.us. And they're both, there's kind of maybe, I'd say maybe it's about 7 or 8 tools. Most of them do pretty much the same things. Most of them either fall into the kind of the mind map category, which is they're really, really fast to use, lots of keyboard shortcuts, but what they produce is basically a little bit boring in terms of visually. Or what you have is the Bubblus model, where it's slightly slower to use because you kind of have to drag things around a little bit, but what you visually produce looks far more attractive. So things like Bubblus have, you know, it'll add colors very nicely. It has lots of pretty color palettes and so on. Both of them allow you to do things like drop in images. For each of them, you can go in, you can add notes, add attachments, all of that sort of stuff. And that's almost it. One final advantage for this, so the area that I teach in is digital marketing, and one of the common things we do is get students to create websites and blogs and so on. And I know that in terms of reflective journals, a lot of courses are kind of going that way in terms of getting students to quickly set up a blog on WordPress and do their reflective journals that way. So one of the lovely advantages of something like MindMap or Bubblus is that you can actually just, once you've saved this and published it, you can go in and you can get the HTML code, and dropping it into a website is exactly the same as dropping in a YouTube video. Yeah, it's no more complicated than that. You copy and paste in the code, and students love the fact that they've produced this interactive thing that they can then place onto their website. So that's me done.
Thanks very much, Ed. So the next champion who I'd like to welcome along is Thomas Broderick from the Department of Sport, Leisure and Childhood Studies.
It's great to follow up the mind mapping with a PowerPoint. So thanks, Zed, for that. I work in the Department of Sport, Leisure and Childhood Studies. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and how and where and who. I think those 6 questions were, I'm just going to use those to form, just to give you a little bit of information about the project that I did. The first 3 are probably pretty simple in terms of when, semester 2 this year in CIT, who, second year recreation and leisure students on 2 modules in elite coaching and sports conditioning, and that's important when we go through what I did with them in a second. So using technology to improve students' understanding and subsequent coaching of movement in sport and exercise using iPad and coaching applications. So It's important for our students. A number of our students are working in the area of coaching with team sports, and will work with clients in the gym setting. So we want to try and introduce some technology that they could use, or some applications that they could use to improve their ability to give feedback to those clients. So if I asked all of you guys to stand up and do a squat, for example, if I asked everyone to, I won't do that, but if we did that, you would all do that differently. Now, it's important that our clients, our students are able to give you maybe the coaching points and the key performance indicators, to be able to recognize those, and then give you feedback to improve your next performance. So that's an important skill that they need to develop. So how we tried to do that was with these two and the two on the left is the BAM video delay app and a huddle technique coaching app. So the BAM video delay really is just delay a live feed for 30 seconds. So the students will perform a squat and then maybe 10 reps, they'll perform the squat 10 times, come back and watch themselves perform the squat exercise. So they'll be able to begin to recognize, well, what are the key performance indicators? What am I doing there that I need to improve on? And then they can work together and say, well, you might do that better by maybe changing your feet position, by keeping your head looking forward. And that app allows them to watch themselves and then improve their feedback to each other, and also improve their subsequent performance of the squat. The second one, huddle technique, is the huddle technique is a coaching application that allows you to kind of annotate on the coaching app. So just to highlight that, I think I'll just show you this image here. So this is one of our students performing a bench press. So on the left-hand side here, his back is off the bench. So if he continues to do that, he will get injured and he will get his lower back. So if he's in the gym doing that constantly, over time he will get injured. So I can use this application, and the students can use the application to say, look, this is maybe using the annotation here of the arrow to say, you need to improve your squat by keeping your back flat on the bench, which you can see on the right-hand side. It also allows the app allows the person to slow down their movement and speed up the movement, and I can also annotate certain comments on the app, and then I could maybe send those to a client that I'm working with. Or if I'm working with an elite team, I could email those to a player and say, look, the next time you go to the gym, this is what you need to do to improve your squat. So they were in the conditioning module that we did this year. They were two apps that we tried to bring in. I suppose the why, very quickly, I think is important. For me, was to challenge learning and step out of comfort zone, but for our students to increase engagement, increase learning, and then develop their key skills. Key skills, I think, for the students is our communication. I'm flicking back and forward. Sorry about that, but the big brother, the idea of a big brother, I think, was just the last thing we did with them. So in our coaching classes, they have 2 practical classes a week. So what we got them to do was just to provide, after the classes, provide a 30-second clip of what they learned during that class. So they went home, got their iPhones out or their iPads, and they picked out key messages, they presented those, and they emailed those videos on. So I think that helped us to do 2 things. First of all, for us as lecturers to see, well, are they learning what we actually want them to learn? And I think the video of them picking out key points helps us with that. And also, I think communication skills for our students is important, and getting to use technology to improve their communication skills. So when they do go out and work with clients and work with teams, they've got the ability to speak to them in front, give them feedback, and use technology to help them in their coaching. So they're the 3 things: the BAM video delay, huddle technique, and the idea of the big brother. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Thomas. And I'm the one who actually messed up Thomas's slide order, so apologies about that. So next up, we have Dr. Roy Slater from the Department of Biological Sciences, and he's going to talk about the investigation into the pedagogical benefit of Go Soapbox in the lecture theatre.
Thanks, Dara. We're on a bit of a downward trajectory. We're going from mind maps to PowerPoint to nothing at all. I wasn't expecting to talk, so I'm just going to give, I suppose, my experience. of working with a particular app off the cuff, and the app was Go Soapbox. And essentially, this was an app which allowed you to get feedback from the students in real time, feedback on their engagement and their comprehension. So we're all probably very familiar with the concept of the muddiest point. So at the end of a lecture, you get your students to jot down what they felt was the most difficult concept or the most, I suppose, badly described aspect of the lecture. You go away, you look through your post-it notes, and you come back the next day and hopefully try and cut through the mud. Well, this, or a component of Go Soapbox, is the confusion barometer. And the confusion barometer essentially allows you to engage with the muddiest point in real time. And so during the lecture, you can stop and ask, well, is everybody getting this? And instead of waiting for a hand to pop up in a class of 200, and as you know, people in those environments don't really want to pop their hand or head up above the parapet, but they're very likely to press a button. So they press the confusion barometer to say, I'm very confused, I don't know what's going on, or yes, you're fine and you can move on. So I trialed this with a small group initially, so a class of 40, and a class of 40 is probably too small of a class really to work with an app like this. And I suppose some of the not so positive feedback from the class on this aspect of it, well, we could just put up our hand. And at this stage, I'd built up a fairly good relationship with that class. But taking that, I suppose, out of the equation, how did we do with it? Well, for me, from a pedagogical point of view, some of the more difficult, or what I would have considered to be the more difficult concepts, were actually fine. And some of the easier concepts, which I would have glossed over, and probably because I glossed over them, were in the end, the muddiest points, the difficult points. So for me, using the app uncovered aspects of my teaching and aspects of my perceived student learning, which I wasn't aware of. So from that point of view, it was very good. The app itself is excellent, and I could definitely say to anybody, particularly with a large class, to use it. As I said, some of the down points were, if you have built up a good relationship with a relatively small class over a period of years, then an app like this probably doesn't help. In fact, it can build a digital barrier between you and the class from a personal engagement point of view. But for larger classes, it is very good. I don't want to be painting a very dark picture, but of course the physical environment is also important, and some of the negative feedback from the students was that it was draining their battery life, so they couldn't tweet as well, probably. And coverage was intermittent with the Wi-Fi. They were the negative points. The positive points were very much in force. They liked it. They liked the idea that they could engage without having to be in front of their peers, seen to be the one that didn't understand. By pressing a button, you remained anonymous, but you could still kind of slow down the pace of the lecture. So that was my whistle-stop tour of Go Soapbox. Really nice app. Helped me, I think, to discover a lot about my own teaching. Some of the muddiest points that I thought were crystal clear are actually quite muddy, and some of the muddier points not so much. So that's it. Thanks very much.
I might mention as well, Roy very kindly got some feedback from students, so that's available on the Digital Champions blog as well, if anybody wants to kind of further see kind of what students had to say about the use of Go Soapbox. So now we have Shane Cronin from the Department of Technology and Enhanced Learning to talk about investigating the use of tablets in self-publishing educational video features.
Okay, hello folks. I won't keep you long. So I suppose the premise for this little project was around the use of video and self-publishing video. So trying to make I suppose the usual process of producing a video as an individual a lot easier. So in terms of, I suppose, the educational uses, you can look at things like I'm from the Technology Enhanced Learning Department in CIT, and online programs are a big part of our business. And when we're dealing with students at a distance, producing some course introductions, presentation practice, guest speakers and so on. These videos are very important to engage our users, and you have to think, I suppose, at a distance, a student isn't getting that face-to-face interaction, so video is very important there. A lot of the earlier presentations that were done today focused around video in some different ways. There's a lot of video happening here, Declan in the corner there, and it's really on the up. And I suppose the main piece of kit that we got for this is a teleprompting kit. So the use of a teleprompting kit basically allows the instructor to script their performance, whatever they want to do, in front of the camera and do it as one individual. So they can go into a room, they can boot up a camera, and they can read a script that is presented to them on the screen in front of them. So you'd probably be familiar with the American president's address now, or something like that, where you'd see "God bless America" and all this in front of you in this nicely typefaced screen. In this instance, this is very similar. It's the same sort of technology, but we're using a tablet. So it's an iPad, basically, that has a set of mirrors and mirrors the image on the iPad. So the individual, as the self-publisher, can toggle the script. They can, they can go through at their own pace. They have this little remote, and it's a kind of a mobile setup as well. So it's quite efficient as an instructor if you want to self-publish your videos and do it in a very sort of orchestrated, prepared way. I suppose all of you can recognize the use and the importance of scripts. So focusing on a good script first and recording the video then afterwards. Again, as some of our colleagues earlier, I know IT Tralee and a few other people were talking about the cognitive load on an instructor. So when you're delivering a video to a video camera, it can be quite daunting. I suppose looking, you're focusing maybe on the camera, on the lights and the heat of the environment and all of those things. So this kind of lets you do that yourself. It lets you go into a room, take your time and manage that process yourself. It's responsive because you have this little remote that you can go through your scripts. You can adapt your script as well as you go on. And it improves the overall efficiency of the presentation. And lastly, the self-publishing professional video. And that's what a teleprompter looks like. So you can see underneath the number 3 there would be where the iPad would be, so with its application, your camera, and the instructor then looking at that image where they can toggle through. So that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. I optimistically thought that we'd maybe have time to go through more presentations, but I think we're running over as is. So all that's left is maybe just to quickly thank all of the digital champions from CIT again. So thanks very much.
So Shane Cronin from the Cork Institute of Technology.
Great, thanks Shane. So can you tell me what TEL tool has your course benefited from the most?
So we use video as our TEL tool, so not a specific application I suppose, but video in general, so we use it for self-publishing, course content and so on.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And what resource do you think is most helpful to students?
Well, I think in terms of the online context, that video as a sort of a mechanism for students to communicate online, especially when they're at a distance, they don't get to maybe get the face-to-face benefits that most students would do. So the use of video for things like speech, I suppose practice, and for presentations and so on was a big benefit really.
Brilliant. And finally, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to someone starting out with TEL? With technology enhanced learning in general, I think it's don't be too overwhelmed about all the applications that are there. There's no one tool for any one educational need, so I think there's so many great tools out there in general and resources to help people to use them, and the advice I would give is don't be afraid to tread the waters and then maybe go a bit deeper.
My name is Thomas Broderick. I work in CIT in the Department of Sport, Leisure and Childhood Studies.
So what TEL tool has your course benefited from the most?
Well, one of the tell tools you used was a video diary, kind of like a Big Brother diary room style, where the students after practical classes had to sit down, write down key points that they learned from the class, and then do a 30-second video clip on that and email it to us. So that was very beneficial for us in terms of looking at, well, what we had planned to do with that group of students, what do we actually want them to learn, and then using the video we got to see, well, did they actually learn those key points?
What resource do you think is most helpful to students?
Well, the use of that video log, the e-learning log, I think allowed them to develop, pick out key points from a lesson, a practical class that we would have done with them. It allowed them to develop their communication skills as well, and also get used to speaking in front of the camera, which some of them will use maybe when they set up their own companies or when they're working in coaching and working with clients as well.
What's the one piece of advice you would give to someone starting out with TEL?
I think you just have to, I think it's action research, you just have to get in there, try it, see what happens, make the mistakes, and then just try and improve on it each year. And I think if you do that, you'll learn from it, you'll make mistakes, enjoy making mistakes, and then just see how you get on with it.